Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this particular episode of Dinner Guide. I'm your regular host, Chef Andy, and today I've got something nice and beautiful for you all to see and learn. We're going to be making a slow roasted lamb shoulder, and I'm going to start by introducing the ingredients to my side. So we're going to start right at the front with a piece of beef cube there, a bit of some bay leaf, one ginger root and one big clove of garlic. We're also going to be using some tomato paste and one red chili. 2 pieces of carrot, about 3 pieces of medium-sized peeled potatoes. We're also going to use some spring onions, some rosemary, some pre-cooked or rather some leftover lamb shoulder here that was previously barbecued, and last but not least, some leeks. So in this particular episode, I'm not going to take you back from the beginning and show you how to make the shoulder from scratch. I'm actually going to try and show you a way of improvising some of those beautiful cuts that most of you may actually have left over from a barbecue. So without further ado, we're going to take a short commercial break, and when we come back, I will show you how easy it is to do a slow roasted lamb shoulder. Don't touch that dial, we'll be right back. Hello ladies and gentlemen, once more, and welcome back. For those of you who are just tuning in with us, we're about to start a very beautiful and simple dish, which is a slow roasted lamb shoulder. And as I'd mentioned earlier, I'm going to make it so easy for most of you who are probably looking for some very easy and malleable recipes that you can actually incorporate with maybe some goat meat or some beef that you may actually have left over from a barbecue. So very simply, we are going to start off by making the base to the pot, to the pot roast, and we will start that off by heating a pan. And you can actually use a stock pot for this particular process, because all we are going to start doing is, first of all, just cooking our vegetables down. We're going to brown them slightly, and we're going to turn that into a very beautiful veg stock. So very handy to have. You'll need some 2 pieces of carrot, some leek, a bit of some rosemary there. You'll also need some bay leaf and some spring onions. So very simply, proceed by peeling your carrot. Never forget as well to take out the root end, and you can just proceed to place that in a bowl and proceed to peel the rest of your carrot. Right, so at this stage you may actually be able to notice that your pot or your cooking pot or your stock pot is actually starting to smoke up. So very handy, a bit of oil, just to help for the vegetables to not stick to the bottom. And all you're going to do now is proceed by adding your carrot trimmings. You are also going to add some of your leek, so proceed by cutting it into some 1-inch chunks. And proceed to add that to your pot. Also add about 1 sprig of rosemary and about 1 or 2 pieces of bay leaf. Proceed to also slice your ginger root in half. Add that in there. And last but not least, 1 crushed clove of garlic. Just break that apart and just add it to your pot. And all you need to do at this stage is basically just proceed to mix everything together. Remember, at this stage, you're actually really trying to build some flavor, so all you need to do is brown the vegetables. And at this stage, something also very handy to use, I like to actually throw in a bit of some black peppercorns. So I'm just going to steal some from my pepper crusher here. And we're just going to throw those in there. Just going to gather all these. Add those into your pot. Proceed to mix everything together once more. And finish by adding a bit of your tomato paste. So this is about 2 tablespoons full. Proceed to mix that together. And just as soon as you start to get that beautiful roast veg aroma in your kitchen, proceed to just start adding some water. And I won't actually mention to you that there's actually a limit to how much water you put in. Remember, your stock is actually going to take some time to cook down, so all you need to do at this stage is just allow the stock to continue cooking, and we're just going to leave it as it is. And next up, we're going to proceed to create some, or rather prepare some of the other condiments that we're going to be using for the roast. So very simply, start with 1 piece of carrot that you'd peeled earlier, and proceed to cut that once lengthways and then into quarters. Of course, leaving those nice big stalks out. And now you can add those to a bowl. Proceed also to chop some of your leeks. Also your spring onions. Proceed to chop those nice and thin. You can just reserve those to the side of your chopping board. And next up, grab also your potatoes and just begin by cutting them lengthways in halves. Reserve that on the side. Now your next step will actually start the process of assembling your roast, and it's a very simple process. So all you're going to do now is begin by combining everything else, but very importantly, very important to actually strain your stock before then. So we're actually going to allow that to continue cooking for about another 4 to 5 minutes, and we're going to take a short break. But when we do come back, I'll actually take you through the last and final process where we're going to be combining that beautiful liquid that we're going to be cooking our pot roast in, some of our vegetables and meat, and we're going to go for the last and final step, which is basically just cooking that in the oven for a couple of hours. But I do have one that we actually started making a little earlier in the show, and you'll actually be able to see what it looks like, but I will not forget to actually take you through the process of how we achieved that last result. So please don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are just with us before the break, we've just been finishing off a very simple and easy gravy that we're going to be making, or rather a stock that we're going to be using to make a base for our pot roast. And we're just about at the last and final stage. So very simply, we're going to start off by rinsing off our potatoes. I'm just going to add those into our pot here. So all we did before the break, all we did in the break was strain the same mixture that we had made the stock in, and we just allowed the same liquid to continue boiling. And now we are just about to add the last and final bits of the items that are really going to give it the flavor. So the potatoes are in now. I'm also going to add 2 medium-sized carrots. And last but not least, a 1/4 cup of some spring onions. I'll also add to that 2 pieces of bay leaf. We'll also incorporate 1 stock cube. This is just to really give it that beautiful pot roast kind of flavor. Right, and we're just going to allow that to come to the boil really quickly. I'm also going to add to that just 1 sprig of rosemary once more to really just give it a nice, beautiful, authentic flavor. And last but not least, we are also going to be adding some chili to this or garnishing with it in a little while, but we will actually just start by chopping that now. And you can proceed to set those aside. We can clear our bowls now. And something very particularly important about the chilies, remember it always actually gives quite a hot afterburn if you don't actually take the seeds out. So what I'm going to do is we're going to just quickly rinse those under the sink. Get the excess of the seeds and the chili flavor out of those, because we are only going to use them for garnish. Let's proceed to rinse those under the tap. And once the seeds are completely removed, return your chili pieces into your bowl. And you can at this stage just grab a bit of some kitchen towel and proceed to lay your chilies right on the towel, allowing them to just drain the excess water. So you can actually just fold your kitchen towel right over like that and just allow them to drain. And now next up, we're going to add the last and the final ingredient before moving everything into the dish that we're going to be baking with. But very important to remind you that you will need some aluminum foil paper, and you will need an oven-proof glass container or stainless steel, whichever one you can actually find. So very, very simply, I'm going to begin by adding the chunks of meat into the pot. Just like that. And we're basically just going to allow that to simmer for just a little bit. And while that continues, I am going to also calibrate my oven to about 180 to 160 degrees. Remember, the pot roast is going to be going in there for anywhere between 4 to 5 hours. And it is a very, very slow cooking process, but it's a very, very simple technique. Once you've incorporated your meat into the stock and it's now just about ready to go in, just proceed to turn that off. And using a piece of tongs, just grab your chunks of meat and proceed to arrange them right at the bottom of your dish. Remember, the idea of actually just blanching the meat really quickly is just to really just refresh it. Remember, we did add some carrots and some potatoes in there, which have been cooking for a few minutes now, but you don't really want them to fully cook in the pot. You actually want them to finish off in the oven, which is exactly what we are doing now. Right, so proceed to add everything else, of course taking some time to arrange the biggest pieces first and finish with the smallest pieces last. And particularly for pot roast, very, very important for me to also remind you that some root vegetables are, or most root vegetables are the best option to go with. You may not actually want to add anything that will cook and mash into your pot roast, because it will actually be cooking for a bit of time, and you will actually require some vegetables that will actually be able to hold their shape even after the cooking. And another thing to also mention is very, very importantly, that you actually use the bigger chunks of chopping technique when chopping anything that you're going to be making into a pot roast, because remember, the smaller the size, the more they're actually going to cook and totally vanish from vision. So it's very, very important that for the big ingredients that you really want to be seen, always cut them in a little bit of a bigger chunk, but be very, very careful also not to cut them too big, and you actually might not be able to cook them fully with the rest of the dish. So just to finish that off, just that one last bit of potato there. And one very simple technique of layering that up, I always just give my pot roast container a bit of a shake like that. And all you do now is proceed to add your stock into that container, making sure to get to the almost to the very top. And you can now proceed to add some of those chunks that are still left over in your pot. And always try and also spread them out a little bit. Remember, this will actually aid them in cooking a little evenly. And just for the last and final piece, right over the top like that. And very, very simply, all you need to do now is cover your container with a bit of some aluminum foil. And this is now going to go in a preheated oven. So we're just going to open that up and we're going to slide that in there. But remember, we did actually mention earlier in the show that we did have one that was already prepared for you. And I'm just going to take that out from up here. I'm just going to lay that on the counter like that. And as you can see, it does actually look very, very dry once you look at it like this, but a very, very simple and handy tip when plating a roast. I particularly like to rest it this way with just a bit of the potatoes and the veggies right in the sauce and the meat right at the top. But it's a very, very easy technique to also finish plating this up. And it's as simple as grabbing your piece of tongs and always making sure to begin by removing anything that's not edible. For instance, those bay leaves. And you can just throw those back in the pot. And you only need to proceed now to start plating by placing the meat right in the center of the plate. And very, very importantly, always remember to look for a bit of height when plating. It does always appeal much better to your diners. So I'm just going to plate those right around the side like that. Then you can actually just turn your plate right around, look for a nice, beautiful, presentable side, and just proceed to set your potatoes right around the chunks of meat, just as I'm doing. And now, last and final bit, a bit of your carrots. Just scatter those right around the sides of the meat like that. Of course, making sure to really just spread them out on the plate. Remember, vision is always about a bit of color and a bit of presentation and a bit of height. So just finish off with those last small bits. And very, very simply, using a nice spoon or a ladle for that matter, you can actually now move that onto the area where you're going to be serving, and you can actually opt to serve your gravy on the side, or you can optionally, just using a ladle, just grab some of that beautiful sauce and pour it right over the meat. And this should actually guarantee for you to have some meat on the table that's not too particularly dry. And all you need to do now is proceed to add the rest of your ingredients, just as I'm doing. Of course, making sure to pour most of the sauce right over the meat. And that should actually be able to sit well on the table without actually going very, very dry. And last but least, last and final addition to that, remember we actually did have some chilies just for garnish. So these I would just probably grab the nice big pieces, spread those right around the sides of the plate, and just add another heap, a small little heap right at the top of the plate. And that is as easy as it is to plate a roast lamb, pork lamb shoulder. And I hope you've actually managed to learn something very, very easy and something that you can actually incorporate in your very own kitchens. Thank you so much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen, once more. Thank you so much for being with us today. I also like to thank those of you who are tuning in on Facebook Live. Thank you so much for showing your support and being with us on the show today. And until the next episode, where we continue to bring you some lovely, beautiful dishes from all walks of life and all corners of the continents, we are going to sum up the show with a very, very simple goodbye. And thank you so much once more. Have a lovely night and see you soon.